Hello everybody, my name is Mr. Johnson. Welcome to the Key Stage 3 biology lesson on cells to tissues. I'm about to share my screen with you. You don't need much, you only really need pen, pencil, bit of paper, something to take notes on, but you'll be able to watch this video again, so don't panic too much if you've not got them to hand or you find that you're not fast enough writing. So you should be able to see my screen at the moment. Key Stage 3 biology, cells to tissues. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify the different life processes with examples. You should be able to describe that cells make tissues, which make organs, with examples. And then finally, at the end of this, you should also be able to describe different systems as collections of organs and their particular functions. So life processes then. What do we mean? All things are classified by their ability to do certain things. This might seem a bit complicated as an idea at first, but let's take a look at it in a bit more detail. What do you think makes a living organism different from a non-living organism? How is, for example, a flower, a ladybird, how are they different from, say, a motor car? Why are they different? Is it the senses that you have? Or is it the ability to move or the ability to grow, perhaps, that make these things different? Question is alive or not? Now, most of us are going to be looking at this and going, well, obviously, sir, a balloon is not alive, whereas a child is. It's straightforward enough. But what criteria do we base that judgment on when it's not as clear-cut as that? A balloon can grow in size if you add more air. Can't it? A child will grow from a baby to an adult throughout their life. A balloon's sensitive to temperature. It can burst if it gets too hot. Well, a child is sensitive to hot and cold. If you're outside on a hot day, you might want to take your coat off. If it's a cold day, you might want to put it on because you feel cold. A balloon can move. It can bat it about, it can move in the wind, and a child can move. A child can move freely. They can go where they want, when they want. Thing is, even though they can all do these things, a balloon is not alive, and a child is alive. So what is it that makes this classification possible? If we take a look at the life processes for each thing, a balloon, movement, does it do it? Yes, it does. Reproduction, does it do it? No, it doesn't. Sensitivity, yes, it is. Nutrition, no, it doesn't. Excretion, no, it doesn't. Respiration, no, it doesn't. Growth, it doesn't really grow. It can stretch, but that's not the same. Child, life processes, movement, yes. Reproduction, yes, when they go on to adult life. Sensitivity, yes. Nutrition, yes. Excretion, yes. Respiration, yes. Growth, yes. So this is what makes the difference between alive or not, being able to perform these life processes. But what do these actually mean? Some of these terms you may never have come across before, depending on what age you are. For something to be classed as a living thing, it has to perform all of the life processes we've just discussed for the child. You can't just do 3 or 4 and miss the others out. So, what are they? Movement. All living things can move from place to place or move parts of themselves in response to a stimulus such as heat or light or pressure or pain. Reproduction. This is a bigger. All living things can make more living things like themselves. That means that animals can have baby animals, baby chicken, the picture here. Plants can reproduce using seeds and pollen. We say that the ability for reproduction means that they can reproduce, they can make copies of themselves. Sensitivity. All living things can sense and react to changes, what we call in biology stimuli, around them. Stimuli can include temperature, if it's too hot or too cold, pain, for example, you get stung by a bee, touch, light, just to name a few things. Nutrition. The need to feed, the need to eat, or the need for raw materials. All living things need various other substances to help carry out all the life processes that they undergo. We get this, humans, from the materials we consume, like food and drink. We say then that the organism needs nutrients for nutrition. Excretion. Bit of a grim video, but it perfectly matches what we're talking about. Excretion is the removal of waste products from the body or from the organism. All living things produce waste materials. When they get rid of these waste things, we say that they excrete them. Waste materials include liquids like urine and gases that we breathe out like carbon dioxide. Respiration. You might not have heard this term, then again you might have. But respiration is a process whereby cells release energy from the glucose from their food and from the oxygen from the air. All living things use respiration to release energy to keep them moving, keep them alive, keep their processes and their systems going. Humans, like many other living things, need oxygen from the air and glucose from food to respire and release energy. Growth. This is a picture of a blue whale. All living things increase in size over their lifetime. You can see the smaller whale underneath, the bigger whale on top. That's actually a mother whale and a calf, and that will grow eventually to be bigger than the mother. We say that these organisms can grow. So they're the different life processes which you should be able to identify with some examples of each. Next step, describe that cells make tissues which make organs with examples of both. Cells are the basic building blocks that everything's made of. Here we have two drawings, one on the left of an animal cell with some features highlighted with arrows, and one on the right of a plant cell, again with some features highlighted with arrows. Animal and plant cells are slightly different in shape and their structure, what they have inside them, due to the different jobs that they have to perform to meet the different life processes. Animal cells, what we've got here is a drawing, and next to it is a picture taken under a microscope. And what we can see there is the animal cell from the drawing and the actual highlighted animal cell, the individual one in the picture. Animal cells contain the following structures: a cell membrane, a cytoplasm, ribosomes, and mitochondria. Don't worry too much if you don't know what they are or what they're for. That'll come with time. They also contain chromosomes, which is DNA coiled tightly into structures that are contained in a nucleus. The nucleus is the arrow pointing to the grey bean-like structure inside the blue diagram. Plant cells then, on the right, I should say, we have a drawing of a plant cell, and then next to that we actually have another picture from a microscope of an actual plant cell. And you can see that that shape there is highlighted and represented in the picture with that one. Plant cells contain everything that's found in an animal cell. They have all the same structures that animal cells have, but because plant cells don't eat the way an animal does, they need other structures to help provide for nutrition, such as chloroplasts. Because they don't have skeletons like animals, they need some structures for support. And so some of the extra things found in a plant cell compared to an animal cell are the chloroplasts, a large storage vacuole, which is a permanent vacuole, and a cell wall to help structure and support the cell. Organelles that are common to both of them then. The cell membrane. You can see I'm pointing to the outer layer on the animal cell, but the slightly inner edge of the plant cell. This is very, very important. The cell membrane of a plant cell is exactly where I pointed the arrow to. If you point it to the outer edge, then you're pointing at a different structure called the cell wall, and that can cost you marks in an exam. The nucleus, which is this structure here, which is where we contain the chromosomes, which are made of DNA. Ribosomes, these little yellow dots here, and these are the place in the cell where they make proteins. It's the site of protein synthesis. Mitochondria, these yellow and black structures here and here. Mitochondria are where respiration happens. Oxygen and glucose are brought to these, and they combine them in a chemical reaction or a series of chemical steps to help release energy for cells to survive. The cytoplasm is a jelly-like substance that fills the cell that everything else is floating in. It's also a store of nutrients. It's where most of the chemical activities of the cell happen. As well as this, we have the organelles that are found in plant cells only. First one being the cell wall, which is this outer edge. Notice that I'm very careful to point that to the outer line of that diagram so that I know the difference between the cell wall and the cell membrane. The large permanent vacuole, which is this gap here, the giant white space in the middle. And the chloroplasts, the green discs that are dotted around the plant cell. These are necessary for the plants to undergo photosynthesis, which is the process whereby plants convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose for respiration using sunlight. Now, the important thing is, why am I telling you about cells? Because cells are the basic building blocks of any organism, but they can work together. So lots and lots of cells of the same type can work together to form a tissue of that type. Tissue is a group of the same cell, working together to do a very specific job. Examples are muscle cells. This is an example of a muscle cell. A group of muscle cells together are called muscle tissue. Under a microscope, it looks something like this. They have the job of contracting together and relaxing together, which is why you can lift things off the floor with your hand and arm. The muscle cells contract and relax all at the same time. And when they do that, it allows you to move your skeleton, move your muscles, keep your heart beating, all that jazz. Animals can have different tissues depending on the cell that makes them. Nerve cells make nervous tissue, which is found in the brain and the nervous system. Muscle cells make muscle tissues, found wherever the body needs to make something move. Fat cells make fatty tissue, which helps store energy and provide a layer of protection for our organs. Here's a picture of an organ. This is the heart. The heart has the job of pumping blood around the body to carry nutrients and oxygen to respiring cells and carry waste away from excreting cells. It's a very important job. The heart is an organ. We've said that already. It's a collection of different tissues that work together to do a job, i.e., pump blood around the body. Some of the tissues in the heart are visible in the photo here. The fatty tissue is the white layer that protects the heart. The muscle tissue is the reddy pinkish layer that contracts and relaxes to get the heart to pump the blood that's flowing through it around the body. There's also tissue types that aren't visible in here, but they have to be there for the heart to be able to work in coordination with the rest of your body. There's nervous tissue in the heart, and that allows the brain and the central nervous system to communicate with it. Organs then. Human body contains many different organs. Some of these organs are the eye, which is the organ responsible for sight, for response to light. The brain, which is used to control and coordinate the body and its responses to stimuli. The stomach, which is used for the digestion of food. The heart, we've already encountered the heart. Its job is to pump blood around the body, supplying vital substances and removing waste. The lungs, these are for the exchange of oxygen with carbon dioxide. You take oxygen in and you get rid of the carbon dioxide. The intestine, which is for the absorption of nutrients with the small intestine and water with the large intestine. Kidneys, which are used to filter waste product from the blood and produce urine. Each of these will be made from a collection of tissues, which are a collection of similar cells suitable to the job that the organ needs to do. You do need to know the names of some of these organs and their functions as you go ahead into GCSE from year 7, 8 and 9. Funnily enough, plants, living organisms, that means they also have tissues, plant tissues. Plants contain tissues made, again, of cells doing the same job. In the image of the celery stalk on the right, you can see very, very tiny holes at the edge of the stalk. These are the xylem and the phloem tissue. Xylem tissues carry water from the roots of the plant through the stalk to the leaves. It's a little bit like a straw, if you imagine a straw that can go through the plant from roots to tips. And the idea is that the water that's absorbed in the soil through the root is carried through those tubes to the rest of the plant, allowing every cell in the plant to get water for its life processes. The phloem, mentioned that, the phloem tissue is the tissue responsible for carrying sugar dissolved in water from the leaves back down the plant to every other cell. So these two tissues are really, really important in a plant because they help support the need for nutrition and they help support respiration. The bottom image shows a root with lots of seeming hairs on the outside. You can see those very fine, tiny sort of hair-like structures sticking off. This is called root hair tissue, and it helps the plant to absorb water from the soil more quickly than if it didn't have it. We say that it gives the roots a bigger surface area for absorption. The bigger the area they can absorb over, the more they can take in. So that helps describe cells making tissues which make organs with examples. The final thing to do is to describe different systems as a collection of organs and their functions. Organ systems then. Different organs can work together to perform a specific function or a job. As we're going through this, you might have realized that there's different layers of organization. So we've got cells being the basic building blocks of everything. Those cells can work together with each other to make a tissue. Different tissues can be combined together to make an organ. Different organs can work together to do a job to make an organ system, and all this works to keep the organism alive by supporting the life processes. Organs that work together then are an organ system. An example of an organ system is that of the brain and the spinal cord. They work together to deliver messages from the brain to the body and back out again. This forms our nervous system, as pictured in the diagram on the right. Other organ systems that we need to mention and be aware of: the digestive system, which is used to support nutrition. Has quite a lot of organs involved. There's the mouth, then the esophagus, which is the food pipe. This then leads into the stomach. We've also got the liver in there. The stomach then passes down into the small intestine, which absorbs nutrients. The small intestine then passes to the large intestine, which reabsorbs any water from our food. Then the large intestine passes to the rectum, which is where fecal matter is stored, before it passes out through the anus in egestion. Egestion means getting rid of food waste, such as fecal matter. The excretory system, as shown in the diagram here, fewer organs this time. We've got the kidneys, which are responsible for filtering the blood and taking urine and any other substances that are toxic out. These are connected by tubes called ureters to the bladder, which is a storage organ for urine. And when the bladder does get full, it can drain out through the urethra, which is when you urinate, you go for a wee. The respiratory system supporting the respiration life processes, again made up of organs. The organs involved in this are the trachea, or you might have heard the term windpipe. The trachea leads down from the mouth to the bronchi, which then lead into the lungs, left and right. And those lungs are the site of gas exchange. I've not gone into too much detail on that here, but to keep the lungs inflating and deflating, there's the organ sits underneath them called the diaphragm. It's a sheet of muscle, and that moves up and down. It contracts and relaxes, and that gives space in the chest for the lungs to expand or contract by causing changes in pressure in your volume of your chest. Musculoskeletal system, talking about the skeleton and the muscles around it, and these are what help us to move. It's involved in motion. And again, different organs. Now there's 206, I think, bones in the human body, and there's muscles all around them. So these are just a few of them, but you should know the skull, its scientific name being the cranium. You should be able to identify ribs on a skeleton. The femur is the upper thigh bone, the upper leg bone. It's the thickest bone in the human body. The tarsals being the toe bones, the carpals being the finger bones. And then for the muscle side, the deltoids on the shoulder, the biceps, which are the upper arm, the triceps, which are underneath the biceps and help your arm to pull in two different directions. And then over on the legs, you've got the quadriceps. So some of the things that you need to know from there. Final, the circulatory system. The circulatory system is made up of the organs, the heart, and then the blood vessels, which are arteries, which carry blood away from the heart, and veins, which carry blood from the body back to the heart. Each organ system is made of different organs. The organ system helps the organism to meet the 7 different life processes that we met at the start of the lesson. If an organ system fails because an organ fails, then the life process can't be carried out anymore. This then can lead to the death of an organism, which is why it's important to have an understanding of these. Doctors talk about these all the time. In summary, cells are the smallest unit of a living organism. An organism is classed as living if it performs all 7 life processes. Similar cells can group together to form tissues which do a job, sometimes called a function. Different tissues can work together to do a bigger job that they couldn't do alone, such as the muscle, nerve and fat tissue of the heart. This makes an organ. Forgive the misspelling there. Different organs can work together as organ systems to help keep the organism alive and allow it to perform a specific life process. If organs fail, then organ systems can fail. This can lead to the death of the organism as it cannot carry out all of the life functions anymore. And that ends our lesson with the description of the different systems as collections of organs and their functions. I hope you've enjoyed this. You can find out more either by looking online or looking at the end of this video. Thank you very much for your time.